joining us right now is USC football executive. Well, I should say USCfootball.com executive. Ryan Abraham. You're not a football executive yet at the university, right, Ryan?
This is like my 30th season covering the team, so maybe I'll get
honorary executive for sure. Yeah.
So Ryan, before we get into the Alamo Bowl, I came off of one of my positions yesterday. As you know, I am very strongly feel that USC and Notre Dame should keep their rivalry going. Mace says just get rid of it. They have a better chance to make the playoff if you don't play it. I'm now
love me for that.
Yeah, I'm now meeting Mace halfway, Ryan. I read Bill Plaschke's article. I'm sure you saw it. I think that USC and Notre Dame should play, but if Notre Dame refuses to play in August or September, I would dump the game. I think USC is the only team playing a non-conference ranked opponent late in the season. It doesn't work out for them. No one else is doing that. I think Notre Dame has to compromise and move the game to August or September. You've been following this from the beginning. Where does it stand now, and where do you think it ends up?
Yeah, I agree with you too. And I feel like for USC, talking to people there, and it seems like the sentiment is that's what they've presented to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. That's where they'd like to play this game. For Notre Dame, they want better games later in the season, because if you watch their schedule this year, after USC was their best win, the two best teams they played were the first two games of the season. They lost both those games. Yep. And even like the Navy game and the Pittsburgh game, those teams didn't even look like they wanted to play Notre Dame. They sort of mailed it in. Navy didn't even play their quarterback. But I think USC, John, is going to draw their line in the sand and say, we're going to play this game early. Maybe the next year or two they extend and, one of the games early, one of the games isn't. But I feel going forward that you're right. If Notre Dame doesn't want to move that game up, I think USC is just going to walk. And so things can change, but that's just the sentiment I'm getting right now.
Okay, so I'm looking at next year's schedule. They've got Ohio State. They've got Oregon, both at the Coliseum. They've got Penn State, in-state college. And right now, no Notre Dame game is officially on the schedule, if I'm right. Do you anticipate there being a game this coming year in the 2026 season?
What's the drop-dead date, Ryan, for where they would have to schedule it? Because sooner or later, people got to make plans, right?
Yeah, I think they're doing that right now, to be honest. I think from my understanding, there's probably going to be like a 2-year extension that, maybe it's agreed to. They have to move things around a little bit. So I anticipate the game happening the next 2 years. Just the long term after that, will they move it to the earlier part? I think USC is going to be like, look, we'll do it early. We're not going to do it another time. But I feel like the next 2 years it's going to happen.
So what do you think of Notre Dame not making the playoff? How do you obviously they're whining and we're taking our ball, we're going home, all that stuff. But they should have been in the playoff. Do you agree?
I mean, they're good enough to be in there, but I felt like once BYU slipped out of that spot that was separating them, it was sort of like there was a little sandwich there. But once you had Notre Dame and Miami right next to each other, how do you not put Miami ahead of them when they already beat them? So I felt like that's the way it was going to go. And, people like Heather Dinich, who, they're in that room all the time. She felt like that Notre Dame was going to be in. And I just like, well, BYU, if they lose, they're going to drop away. And then you'll have Notre Dame and Miami next to each other. How do you justify putting one above the other when one beat them? So it kind of happened the way I thought, but it's a bit of a mess. And Notre Dame has an advantage next year. I think if they're in the top 12, they'll automatically be in the field. That wasn't the case this year. So, but yeah, it kind of went the way I thought it was. And, for Notre Dame, it's like you kind of have to join a conference at this point. There's a lot of disadvantages not being in one.
Hey, Ryan, how do you feel about Notre Dame? We're taking our ball, we're going home, we didn't make the playoff. What do you think? Are they doing the right thing by skipping a bowl game altogether?
I don't think so. I think we've seen different teams, approach bowl games in different ways. And I'll give Lincoln Riley a lot of credit. The last 2 seasons, they felt like they got better. They have a bunch of guys opting out. Yeah, guess Jeremiah Love is not going to play in the game. But you're going to have a lot of young players that you only have 12 games. There's no conference championship game. Now you're not doing a bowl. Notre Dame season's been over for a while, and they're going to be out of everyone's mind. So I feel like it would have been, to get 15 more practices, it would have benefited Notre Dame.
Ryan, USC has the number 1 ranked recruiting class for this year. They were ranked number 1 pretty much everywhere you look. Is there a crown jewel in that recruiting class, or is it more that they just got it really deep? Or is there somebody you think could make an impact right away in that group?
So can I pepe like the 5-star offensive tackle is the highest ranked player that they brought in, and they need it. They haven't had like a 5-star left tackle. Normally, the West Coast guys have gone to Oregon in the last several years. Now, he's a West Coast kid that went to IMG in Florida, and then they were able to bring him back. And I think he's the crown jewel of this, but there is a lot of depth as well. And we're seeing some guys kind of into the portal. They're changing the philosophy of bringing in a lot more high school players and sort of building through that. But it was important, I think, to get a very highly ranked offensive lineman, a left tackle, because Oregon's been great at recruiting those, and I think USC's trying to compete with that. They're getting back to it now, and having Pepe in there is a big deal.
By the way, to put this into some perspective, too, the USC has not had the number one recruiting class in the country since 2007 when Pete was here. And this is the first time in 15 years that a non-SEC school has had the number one recruiting class in the country. So the class really did hold together. Why do you think they improved so dramatically in recruiting this year?
Money?
Yeah, I think.
Is it they get the NIL rolling, or what happened?
Yeah, but I mean, everybody has money. And like when people make fun of Texas Tech, you bought your team. Everybody
did buy
has
their
to pay
team.
money.
They totally bought their team.
So
they do, but everyone has to do that kind of stuff. I think USC, for once, was actually ahead of the game because if you remember back in July, that's when things switched over. The House settlement took effect, and then you had to start to go through that clearinghouse, and there was revenue share was going in. But any NIL deals you created for your incoming student athletes before that, there was no regulations whatsoever. So a lot of teams, or a good amount of them, front-loaded a lot of deals. So they were able to sign up some of the guys like Mark Bowman from Notre Dame and all those high-ranked players, get them in the system, be like, hey, we're going to bring you in. This is going to be the rate. And there's no sort of policing it. You could pay whatever you wanted if you get boosters to back it up. So they did a really good job of front-loading those contracts and focusing on local high schools, Notre Dame and St. John Bosco and, Corona Centennial. They just weren't doing that the last couple of years for some reason. They bring in Chad Bowden from Notre Dame. They had a real good GM. They have a great personnel department now, and I think that was the biggest difference.
All right, last thing for me, Ryan. Alamo Bowl is, some coaches play everybody and other coaches don't play anybody, and sometimes the players opt out of the game. What do you see most of USC's starters participating or not participating?
I think some of the stars probably won't, like the Mekhi Lemons and Jacoby Lanes. But I think you're going to get a lot of other, guys in there. I think there's 11 players that declared that they're going to go into the portal when it opens in early January. But not most guys that weren't, big contributors. And so I think that's part of the personnel staff too, where they're recruiting better, being able to retain the players that you really want. Now, some player might walk because they're getting a way better deal somewhere else. And you just have to say, hey, we don't want to match that. We don't feel you're worth that much. I think there's going to be some tough decisions, just like a GM and a professional league will make. But I think for the most part, you're going to see a lot of these guys come in and play. I think Jay Maiava, I feel like he's going to announce at some point he's going to come back and play in this game, which will be a big deal. And I think it could help. A lot of young players will still get to play. And I think it helps a lot just being able to get that, all that experience for those 15 practices in the spring.
And by the way, people will remember 10-3 or 9-4. It is in Lincoln Riley's permanent record. So as we look back at this year, the bowl game actually is, at least in my mind, important. All right, Ryan, thanks very much for coming on, man. If we don't talk to you again before the holidays, happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that stuff, man.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on,
guys.
All
right, thanks, Ryan.
Right,
See ya.
Football fans, the Rams Toyota Countdown to Kickoff is live from Cosmo.